Up next is an armchair conversation titled Environmental America, Taking the Message Home, moderated by AREI President Sally Rainey, and includes panelists Kim Stevens, State Director for Environment Colorado, and Margie Alt, Executive Director of Environment America. Please welcome our next speakers.
Well, this is actually one of my favorite subjects because my background really was in mobilizing citizens around public land, water, energy, wildlife, wilderness, national parks, conservation areas, Grand Canyon, and it was all about messaging and how you touch people, I think, first in their hearts and then in their heads, and you hit on that. And so we've had some conversation around communication, what words to use, how we frame things, how we don't frame things. I know that you have 1 million people now in all the states listening, tuning in to you. So, and you're in the Federation, right? So the states are helped very much by the national and vice versa. Correct. You both inform each other. So my question is, I know what it's like to go into Washington, lobby for environmental, causes, clean air, clean water, endangered species, all of it. It's very difficult if you don't have a powerhouse of voices behind you, but we may not be the right messengers. So how do you two deal with that at the national level? Who's your best messenger? Who do you pick as your best messengers? And then at the state level as well, to mobilize citizens.
Right. Honestly, our best messenger is the person who is affected by and cares about these issues. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about how do we bring the message to people, we are literally talking about how do we bring the message to people. So we go door to door. This summer we'll talk to somewhere close to 700,000 households about issues like protecting the pollinators, and we'll leave 1 million pieces of literature with families all across America talking about 100% renewable. And each of those people who starts to care and cares more becomes the best messenger for their congressperson, who becomes the best messenger for their senator, who becomes the best messenger. And so it's all about taking the message that the individual will care about. Why should somebody care about 100% renewable energy? Is it their kid with asthma? Is it because they can be a solar installer and make a good living that way? So our vision is we start with people and find the messages that they care about and bring them into the political process and create the political space for their own members of Congress to act.
So one quick question before I go to you. Out of 700,000 pieces of literature and knocking on those doors, what's your percentage of return of people who actually will go talk personally, because that's the best, yep, to their representatives, whether it's state or national? And what's the percentage, do you know, what the percentage of return is on people writing letters or signing petitions?
Yep. So the first thing to realize is a lot of people aren't home the first time we get there. Mm-hmm. So we end up going around and around to try and find our target audience. Mm-hmm. The second thing we know is probably of the people we talk to, about 85 to 90% of them agree with us on the issue. Mm-hmm. About 65 to 70% will sign something or get involved right there at the door. Mm-hmm. Probably about 20% of the people will actually become members of ours, Environment America or Environment Colorado's, and stick with us for the long term. Mm-hmm. And then maybe 1 to 2% of the people will actually go meet with their congresspeople. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty small, mm-hmm, when you get down to it, but if a congressperson meets personally with 10 people on the same issue, it has huge implications.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do? Same thing?
Yeah.
Same strategy?
On the state level. And I think going off of what Margie said is just
our decision makers knowing that we are knocking on doors in their constituency gives us a lot of power as well. But you asked what were some of the best messengers that we've had here in Colorado, and I think a really good example on the work we've done is our work around climate change and finalizing the Clean Power Plan. So I'm sure most people in the room know about the Clean Power Plan, sets the first ever limits on global warming pollution from coal-fired power plants, and I bet a lot of people in the room also helped to make that happen, so thank you. But in Colorado, we knew, working with Environment America, our decision makers, our senator, our governor were key to get them out publicly supporting the Clean Power Plan early, right out of the gates. And when we're looking at, let's say, our governor, we knew there were a couple of really important messengers that we needed to be mobilizing in Colorado in a big way to create that political space for him to be able to lead on the Clean Power Plan and climate action. And so those were three things. So first, organizing outside of the Front Range. So we could not just show that people in Denver and Boulder cared about climate change. We needed to get out into the West Slope, and so we organized big events all across the Western Slope, including right here in Aspen. Chip and Sally actually participated in one of those events. We turned out 75 people in Aspen talking about the local impacts that climate change has here in the mountains. So bark beetle kill, the impact on our outdoor recreation industry, and then really how that connects to the solution of the Clean Power Plan and why that's so important. We did a similar event down in Durango where we had 80 people having the same types of conversations. The second really important voice we needed to mobilize in Colorado was health. So we heard before from Celinda Lake that health is a very important messenger and talking point if we're talking about climate change. And so we held events in Denver where we put together a panel of key health experts from Anschutz Medical Campus. It's one of the leading pulmonary institutions in our country to talk about what is at stake when it comes to our children's health or other Coloradans' health if we fail to act on climate right now. And then the third really important messenger was the economy, so the clean energy industry. Wind and solar has really taken off in Colorado. We've had a lot of progress here with our state's renewable energy standard and other really great policies. And so we wanted to make sure we were getting solar businesses, from the people making the panels to putting them up on the roofs to getting out there and helping make homes more energy efficient, to really share this story with our decision makers that this is good for the economy as well. And then took all of those voices and emphasized them and elevated them in the media, and then really made sure we're driving it home to the actual decision makers, so bringing it to them. And we do that by either sitting down and meeting with them and bringing these important messengers with us, or it could be we invited the decision makers to all of these events, so either the governor or his staff, to then be able to have those really important face-to-face conversations, get those real life stories like Margie's brother, but here in Colorado, of why it's so important to act on climate change now. And between that work and the work that we did with our coalition of a number of other environmental groups in the state, we were able to create the political climate where now we see, despite polluters trying to get the governor to block the Clean Power Plan and not implement it in Colorado, he's coming out and strongly saying, nope, in Colorado we're acting on climate with or without the Clean Power Plan. It's a political winner here, and it has a lot to do with mobilizing those important messengers.
So a question for both of you, and I'm just going to use a local issue as an example, is the Thompson Divide. That issue's been going on for about 17 years. And we're getting close, but there has been tremendous outpouring of public support, yet the BLM, the agencies that were involved stepped back. We're going to get another committee, we're going to study, we're not going to do this, we're going to let the leases go for another year, etc. So how do you deal with, or do you deal with situations like that? Because I know you both work on public land issues, and now we have public lands being put on the chopping block, going, it's like the Sagebrush Rebellion was 15, 20 years ago, going back into private hands. So how do you handle that?
Do you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, I'll start. I have two answers to your question, Sally. So the first is, I do think everything we do is a process of building and building and building and chipping away. For any of the biggest victories we've had in this country, whether it's on environmental issues or civil rights or women's rights or consumer protection, it's never been just like, oh, here's a good idea, let's do it. So we know we are up against entrenched interests and powerful forces, and we just have to have the stick-to-itiveness to move things forward. And it's one of the reasons I like organizing as opposed to other ways people make change. Because the other experience I have is if we get people to go to the Thompson Divide and see what's at risk, and then they get involved, and then let's say somebody at BLM isn't that responsive, those people aren't going to forget that they love the Thompson Divide or that they went and they weren't listened to. And the more people who come together and get madder and get more of their friends together and get madder and get more of their friends together will make a bigger difference over time. So that's my first answer. My second answer is I do believe we need the sort of perfect combination of pressure and political space in order for decision makers to act. And if you take an entrenched agency like BLM, there have been the same bureaucrats and the same pressures from developers and miners and loggers on that agency for decades. And government isn't that quick to move. And so it makes me even more righteous about our position because we know we're right. The science is with us, the facts are with us, the people are with us, and it's just another reason that elections matter. We have to create the political space, like the example Kim gave, but we also have to be vigilant and hold decision makers accountable. And President Obama doesn't sit at BLM, but those people still do work for him, and he needs to give rise to the kinds of outcomes we need, and we got to pressure him if we can't pressure the agency.
And that comes around to leadership. What kind of leadership do you go after in Colorado at the citizen activism level? What are you looking for?
For what am I asking citizens to do? Definitely depends on the issue and what the end goal is, right? But if I'm looking at, let's say we're talking about organizing these important messengers, right? So the people who can tell the really important parts of our story that I, as Director of Environment Colorado, yes, I can say that our waterways are being polluted and it's going to hurt our outdoor recreation industry, but it's going to mean a lot more if a rafting company owner is actually saying that himself. I can spit out the stats about, more kids miss school because of asthma than any other reason, but it's gonna mean a lot more when I have a reputable doctor from Anschutz or from National Jewish coming out and saying that for me. So, that's the first thing, the most important thing. And what I'm asking them to do is a whole host. And it's really all about moving these people up the ladder of engagement. So the first ask, you want to have a lot of easy asks that make it easy for them to get involved. So you can sign this letter. You can write this letter to the editor, to your local newspaper. You can just write a letter to your decision maker or give them a call. Once they say yes to that, then I am constantly creating plans of how I can keep them engaged and build this movement for the long term so that not only am I protecting this river right now, but then down the road I can protect the Clean Water Act and all of our waterways in Colorado and across the country and have that person be an important messenger there. So beyond those first asks, then I'm inviting them to speak at these panel events where we're showing all of this public support or sitting down at a lobby meeting with me, with the governor, sharing their personal story. And actually we have a video, and if you guys can play that in like 1 minute, that'd be awesome, that tells a good story. One of our biggest issues that we've been working on in Colorado for the past decade, so talk about taking a long time to work on an issue. We have been working to close loopholes in the Clean Water Act that leave 68% of Colorado's streams not fully protected under the Clean Water Act. We've been working to close those loopholes for a decade. It has taken a long time, and we knew one important voice was outdoor recreation, talking about, outdoor rec combined with tourism, second largest economic driver in the state of Colorado. So if you get that industry speaking out to a decision maker, it's really powerful. And so we put together this awesome little movie that shows not only that voice, but some other key voices that we use to get the EPA and our senator to support this issue. So yeah, you can play it now. Pretty fun.
The rivers and streams in Colorado are vital to our lifestyle and to our public health.
I have a 2-year-old child, and it makes you think about what kind of legacy you want to leave.
The perception of the state of Colorado nationally is clearly a center for outdoor adventure. 500,000 people came rafting last year in the state, generating over $160 million impact economically to the state.
Blue Sky, we run about 8,000 folks on the river each year.
It's very important to me and to the recreation economy of Colorado in general for our rivers and streams to be protected. Because if people are afraid of getting in the water, they're not going to want to go paddling.
Water is the most integral part of the brewing process. We use it for everything. It's 95% of the beer is water. So having the freshest, cleanest water is very important to us. Not having to put it through reverse osmosis or anything like that is just so key for us. It saves us so much money, and it really helps with the environmental impact.
We need to protect our clean waters, not only for my citizens here in San Miguel County, but for all users across America who rely on clean water downstream.
Clear Creek is an important water source, not only for my residents that get drinking water from Clear Creek, but also it flows down to Golden and into the Golden Coors Brewery, and then off to the South Platte and the agricultural communities and industries out on the Eastern Plains.
In Colorado, we have some fantastic fishing.
When a fish population starts to struggle and we go look for the answers, it usually has to do with water quality.
We're at a critical stage right now in how we manage our waterways.
Thank you, President Obama. Thank you, EPA.
I want to thank the EPA for making this ruling that closes loopholes on polluters.
Now we're relying on you in the Senate to protect clean water for generations to come.
I urge our senators to please support this initiative.
I would like to thank and ask Senator Bennett to continue to defend clean water protection for the state of Colorado.
So you can see when I talked about the climate campaign and those important messengers that we were mobilizing, some of the same ones on this issue. So we had outdoor recreation, we had public health, so nurse. We had a lot of local elected officials. Senator Bennett asked time and again, I just need to know what county commissioners and local elected officials say. So we put them in a movie and sent it to him. And then he also the Western Slope. So we had folks in Aspen, in Glenwood Springs, in Durango, all over the place. And so this is another one of the things, like moving them up the ladder of engagement. These people first signed on to a letter, very easy. Then we asked them to participate in an event. Then we asked them to be in this movie. And then the rafting company down in Durango, John Wilkie's, he actually then flew out to Washington, D.C. and lobbied the EPA and Senator Bennett on this issue and our climate change campaign. So that's all about moving them up and having a bunch of things for them to do.
Do you work with anglers and sportsmen and bring them into the clean water and clean air and habitat issues? How do you work with them?
Yeah, well, we did have a couple of fly fishing guides and anglers in there, and I get a lot of flack actually from my colleagues who make fun of me for just working with anglers because I personally like to fly fish. That's half of it. I like to create a fun campaign experience for myself. But it's actually really awesome. So, we think about recruiting our members. They're not always the most political people. You're talking to to every single person at their door. So we start with an issue we know everyone's going to care about. So, be it our campaign to protect bees, to save the future of our food, or to keep our waterways clean. We did the same thing with sportsmen who, aren't traditionally political. These people fly fishing, they might not be like, I'm an environmentalist and I'm out there pounding the pavement on these political issues every single day. But when I come to them and I talk about the issue in a way that appeals to their motivation, so you're a fly fisherman, you probably care about clean water. Let me tell you what's at risk, what the opportunity is, why it's so important for you to act right now, and then here's this really easy thing you can do. You're politicizing these people, giving them an opportunity, and making it really easy for them to get involved.
Do you think that petitions, online petitions, really work?
They work for something. And what they work for is getting a lot of people engaged at the most basic level, and they work for raising the attention on an issue. I don't know that anybody in government will change their mind because they get 1,000 petitions. But for example, Kim and I were here, but our colleagues at Environment America were in DC today presenting over 4 million petitions to the EPA around the pollinator issue, with a lot of our colleagues from groups across the spectrum, beekeepers, organic farmers, et cetera. And there's no way they're not going to notice that they got 4 million signatures on something. Does that change their mind right there? No. But it raises the bar, and those 4 million people will get back to tomorrow with a little photo from the event and a little note from what happened at the event, and we'll ask them to take the next step and the next step. And so I think people want to do these things for their own reasons. Everyone's self-interested. I think people want to do these things for future generations. They want their kids to have healthy food and safe food. And I think people like to be part of something. So they're psyched to know there were 3,999,000 other people who did this with me. And so for all those reasons, plus the media attention and pressure you can put on a decision maker, I think they work. I don't think it's just a, automatic response though.
Check the list, we did the online petition, we're done. But it's an important piece of the puzzle. And I think with the climate change issue, the Clean Power Plan, we generated, with our coalition, the most public comments to the EPA that they've ever received on any single issue in their whole history. And a lot of those were online email petitions. And you better believe that gave them the political space to then say, sorry, polluters, the public have spoken in ways we have never seen it. We got to move forward on this rule and act on climate.
Political space, we used to call it, we had a different term for it, and it really was a political cover.
Right.
We'd provide political cover. It wasn't, so you're using a much more diplomatic PC term, but the political cover is really, really important.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that they know that they have some space to move on an issue.
And we don't think we should be getting politicians or expecting politicians to do things that are out of their own self-interest either. Everyone's self-interested. So if we want a politician to act, it needs to be because we can show them that a majority of their constituents want it or need it, or it's good for the district, or their key constituencies want it, or donors, or what have you.
Well, I would disagree with you a little bit on that. For example, we have a senator here who voted for the Keystone Pipeline.
I know.
Yes, okay. And it was, it was a total political decision. And now that we're dealing with climate change issues, we can't just look at pipelines that happen to cross our backyard.
Correct.
We're talking about millions of acres of boreal forest that are being strip mined in Canada. So I think that we have to come from two different angles on some of these issues to our local representatives so that they really get it.
Yes.
And I was in Canada and saw the boreal forest.
Me too.
And saw that tar sands, which was the most depressing thing ever. And I have met with Michael Bennett on this issue multiple times, and he needs to keep getting educated. I think he just needs to keep hearing from people. He knows it's a decision that none of us agree with.
Right.
And he'll acknowledge that. He has his own reasons for doing it, but I don't think we let people off the hook. I think we have to keep forcing these issues until it is in his political best interest to be with us instead of against us.
Right. Right. So we're out of town, out of time, but I want to share a little story with you. In my background is that there were several dams proposed on rivers several years ago here in Colorado, which we got several in the Wild and Scenic Rivers system. But the Secretary of Interior had hearings here in the state. They had 4 hearings, and we were talking about powerful preschoolers. I took my son, he was 5 years old, to the hearing. And I put his name on the list to testify. And so they called him, Justin Ranney, they called him. There's, I don't know, 500 people, 400 people. And everybody looks around and they can't see who's this person. It's because he's this high and he's walking down. His head, his little blonde head, is even with everybody in the chairs. And he walks up there, and I still have his handwritten presentation, and he says, "Mr. Secretary, my mommy and my daddy love the Dolores River, and I don't want you, and I've been on the Dolores River, and I don't want it to be hurt. So you better go with my mommy."
Yay!
And the press loved it, but the headline was "A cheap shot."
Kids always win. Use kids.
And actually it did. It got a lot of press. Good. It got a lot of press. So powerful preschoolers, I think, could be a good strategy.
It's a good one.
So thank you very much for what you do. Let's give these 2 ladies a big round of applause.